Уважаемые господа,
Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. We are opening our session today, and the name of the session is Mobile City and how to make public transportation popular. And we have an extremely interesting composition of our key speakers, and Maxim Liksutov is on the stage. He's deputy mayor of the city, main reformer of Moscow transportation system, and definitely he is the man for which is frequently accused of everything. And Mr. Mokos from Bogota city in Colombia, and we don't know that in Curitiba was the first one to pioneer BRT, and then in Colombia they took, and we also have Mr. Parolotto. Federico is our frequent guest, and we consider him a specialist on Moscow and Milan. For Moscow is an example to follow. In 1990, they have 700,000, no, corrections, 700 cars for 1,000 citizens, and now it is less than 500, and they're going to the 300 cars per 1,000. We have Michael Robinson from United Kingdom, and he is director on City ID. He is saying from New York. I apologize. It's written here, Great Britain. And Roland Rees is from Strasbourg, the mayor of Strasbourg, and deputy head of the department from Yandex. And it's very clear why Svetlana Karateva is here, because everybody checks Yandex daily for traffic. And my colleague from the High School of Economy, Alexei Belyanin, and the chief speaker, Evgeny Mikhailov, is not at the table, but he is in the first row, and when the tramways don't run well, all questions are directed to him. And so we start our work, and Maxim Liksutov will be the first one. He is the person to be blamed for everything in the Moscow government. Please, the floor is yours. Very good introduction. Thank you very much. I probably will change my business card after this. And I have prepared for you a small presentation with certain things which you are well aware of, but still I would like to tell to all of our participants that today is the day of the Constitution, and my best regards in this connection, and it is a great event in life of all Russian citizens. And entire history of our city is associated with very turbulent developments and events, and quite often issues which are topical for Moscow are the basic ones for the country, and the transportation issue and all the relevant aspects are continuously discussed in the mass media round the clock. And the main component for Moscow transportation system is our public transportation. 10 million people are moved daily by public transportation, and we would like to provide the best comfort for these people, and for those people which use their private cars should also have decent conditions to move around the city in cars. I am quite confident that developed public transportation will be a driver for further development of our city. And the efforts which we invested into it for the last 4 years, with the advent of Sergei Sobyanin, the mayor of Moscow, constitute a good foundation for significant improvement of Moscow traffic. And jointly with Muscovites, we have taken very important decisions to make their life comfortable and more exciting. So this is my first slide, and this is not the first one. That is my first slide. And the point is that the life is not easy for motorists in the city. And currently we have, during the day, regular day, like 3 million cars on Moscow streets, and it is 25 square meters of roads per one car. And this is what differs Moscow from other cities of the world, and we are, by this indicator, among the most densely overloaded, and our urban residential structure doesn't allow us to expand streets, and therefore we would like to increase the connectivity of the city and to have more interconnecting passages. And until the year 2020, we are going to build around 700 new kilometers of new roads, and the main emphasis will be placed on what makes a city better interconnected. And we have 3.9 million registered cars in Moscow. In addition, in Moscow region, we have 3 million cars registered. And we need to sum up these indicators, because we have kind of unified transportation agglomeration. So I believe we have around 7 million private cars. We are not talking about trucks and lorries. And these are the cars which travel along Moscow streets every day. And this is an issue which we can resolve only jointly. This year, the number of private cars increased by another 250,000, and I believe that in the crisis period, the number of cars will not become less. People continue buying cars, and by the year 2020, we will have another 1.5 million cars in this city. And probably you are aware of the opinion of certain experts. 500 cars can be a comfortable limit for Moscow. So if we have 500,000 cars on the streets, it will be quite good. And currently we have around 3 million cars, and 7 million private cars are registered in Moscow, and we will add another 1.5 million cars which will be purchased by Muscovites in the coming years. On my next slide, we demonstrate the findings of a survey we carried out last year. And the main question there was addressed to motorists, and we asked them how many of them are prepared to use public transportation if the quality of it is excellent. So 25% of respondents, the car owners said, if we radically improve public transportation, they will be ready to abandon their car and use public transportation, and it is 700,000 cars, and it is 3.5 million people addition rides by public transportation in the city. On the right-hand side, you can see what will happen if they do decide to use public transportation. So we will have an increase in metro rides by 1.5 million, and the same happens with the buses and commuter trains. And I believe these are quite significant indicators, and this allows us to decide where shall we place the emphasis in order to satisfy this demand, so that we can offer to potential passengers of public transportation decent conditions for the ride. So what we are doing to create these conditions of comfort and improve the services for the motorists, we have set a very ambitious goal, which is reflected in our city plans. And the mayor confirmed it, that we need to dramatically increase the capacity of public transportation thanks to adding additional infrastructure. And our goal is to increase the number of seats in public transportation to up to 42 million passenger seats by the year 2020, from 31 million places. And it means that we will extend the metro lines, and we will also use some new stations where they can change from line to line, and we will also develop the commuter train network, and the Moscow government invests 50 billion rubles into these developments. We will open another ring road in Moscow, and in combination, these factors will allow us to significantly improve the capacity of the public transportation. And we also made a very detailed survey, and I believe we have a full understanding of what is needed to new passengers and the current passengers to make the rides in public transportation comfortable and attractive even. And we did the rating on the issues which Muscovites identified for us, and we divided it into the metro and buses and commuter trains, and we identified the areas of concern of our motorists, and the speed and unpredictability of traffic is one of the issues for them. The safety and comfort on the way, the easiness of acquiring a ticket, and ease of planning the trip. So in metro, we have the best indicator of the comfort in the ride, and on the second place, we have the accessibility of transportation, and these are the indicators which are of significance for us, and it allows us to place proper emphasis in our transportation program. And we have already achieved a lot, but people tend to forget about it, and they speak about bad things mainly. But although we haven't resolved it fully, but still the basic problem since 2010 was to buy tickets for monthly rides in metro, and there was always a long lines of people to the ticket offices at the end of every month. And we removed this, resolved this issue, and we introduced new solutions. And Yandex, the computer company, is providing various convenient services and applications for it. In addition, we have Wi-Fi in all metro trains, and it is not an issue anymore. But we still have a lot of things to implement, and I believe that if we do what we designed, we will be among the leaders in the world. And these are some issues I would like to highlight with the road transportation, and this needs to be resolved by concerted efforts, and almost 60% of this transportation, and as you know, that the reliability of traffic is the main concern of potential passengers. 60% of these delays is connected to the traffic jams, and 49% it is the traffic jams on roads at intersections, and 14% those delays caused by accidents, traffic accidents, those which are just not serious ones, but the motorists have to wait until 1 hour, 2 hours, and then this kind of obstacles become the cause of the traffics. And now we are trying to introduce a European protocol to resolving this accidents, but still only 1% of motorists use these protocols, and therefore we need to state it is not that popular, or it is not feasible probably, and when our goal is to make it more commonly used. So what measures we are taking to make public transportation work better and to alleviate life of our motorists? We arranged what we call a unified parking area and dedicated lanes on roads, simplified registration of traffic accidents, and attracting the public, the traffic police quicker to the place of an accident. And now I would like to speak about some additional efforts which we are going to undertake. It is optimizing or streamlining the traffic network, and then rapid bus system to be introduced, and future development of parking lots, parking areas in Moscow. So accessibility of public transportation will also benefit from extension of our metro lines and rapid trains, and further railway infrastructure, and improved tariff menu, new transportation navigation, the introduction of some bicycle lanes and parking lots at metro stations. And this was the program we started in 2012. We created like 7,000 parking lots for cars which motorists leave and then take metro. Now, from 10%, the occupancy rate of these parking lots jumped to 85%, and it's a happened to be a very good tool to reduce the number of cars on roads. And we also will continue to set up Wi-Fi points or at the public transportation, and also improving taxi service in the capital. My next slide is about increasing the speed of public transportation and the reform of traffic management. And what we are going to do, and even this year we have announced two tenders, two bidding procedures, and new lots will engage city transportation for 5-year contract, and the share of private companies, which amounts to 30% in the public transportation, will remain. And for the next 6 months, we will actually arrange this bidding, and there will be additional 30 lines for 5-year duration for new transportation companies. And what will be the benefit of the passenger? There will be more traffic stops, and each of the stops will be longer on the roads until 40 meters, and the intervals between public transportation buses will be shortened. And the same concerns streetcars or tramways. And we will remove this duplication of routes. We will introduce new 60 kilometers of dedicated line for buses to those 15 kilometers which we have now. And we will continuously, daily improve the route system in response to the needs of the population by their request. And we will have a unified city ticket, and there will be no other tariffs, no rates for other of other price, and we will not have those what we have route minibuses, which are completely disorganized these days. And these are our ticket solutions. And as I said, our Troika transportation card is the most quickly developing ticket system in the world. We just introduced it quite recently, and 25% of all trips on public transportation, 4 million rides, are paid by these Troika cards. And by introducing this intermodal tickets, the number of lines reduced 2 times, and people buy much less tickets these days. And we also did our best to retain, to constrain the growth of prices on tickets in public transportation. And the mayor was very consistent there, and it will not exceed inflation. This is the commitment of the mayor of the city, so nobody should expect that one day they will just skyrocket. And another thing to talk about is city navigation. And thanks to such companies like Yandex and some other companies which develop our signage system, which make the city navigation transparent and easy. We have 495 displays in the city which indicate the time remaining to the next bus or tramway. Another 600 displays will be also erected at the bus stops, and this makes life much easier. And we will have more than 20,000 elements of transport navigation installed across the city next year. And in the year 2015, we will launch, at the very beginning of the year, a unified transportation portal where we will have all services available, and it will be also a very good platform for communication for Muscovites on issues of public transportation. As for the bicycles, last year we started this paid bicycle rides in Moscow, and city bicycles number increased in 6 months by 200%, and we increased the number of those renting places, and the bicycle, thanks to development of those bicycle lanes and the efforts of the Moscow government, they gain in popularity, and the attitude of people has changed, and people, out of just leisure trips, they use bicycle rides for business purposes. And give me another 3 minutes. So transportation nodes, and we have several of them, where at Vykhina we have 500,000 passengers coming from outside to Vykhina metro station by cars and by commuter trains, and there at this transportation nodes we concentrate our efforts, and on these slides we demonstrate our achievements. We improve the rolling stock at different types of transportation, and our plans by 2020 we would like to achieve very ambitious goals, which is we replaced 700 metro cars, more than 1,800 buses, 300 cars of commuter trains now are added. We have 5,000 new buses and tramways and 1,000 new cars and commuter trains. And we introduce the economy of the life cycle for this public transportation. It actually saves some costs for city budget. And this is a new model. Our goal, which I explained, is to attract private business to this segment. And the companies which want to have clear rules and conditions for the services they provide for the Moscow passengers. As for taxi, when we started it in 2011, we believe that only by 2020 we will have 45,000 legal taxi cars, and we overdid it already. We have more than that, and we believe that we will add another 7,000 in 2015. So what are the basic goals for us these days to make the public transportation quick, understandable, and easy to use? So many things can be tackled only in continuous contact with interaction with Muscovites, those who live in this city. And in 2015, this is my major goal, to establish the clear and understandable dialogue with citizens of the city. And we believe that these challenges we would like to address are important for millions of people, and we are creating a bridge between our plans and the needs of the population. And we can address them in a concerted manner. And the last figure I would like to say, 90,000 Muscovites and citizens of Moscow region work in the transportation sector. It is a tremendous number of people. It's a human capital which we need to reckon with, and we need to provide good working conditions for them, improve their skills, and this is what we will also implement next year. I apologize for extending my presentation, but still, Maxim, thank you very much. A lot of facts, and this is why most of the public came here. But my position is that we will give the time for all speakers and then start asking questions. Otherwise, we will not have time for everybody. Our next speaker will be Antanas Mokos from Colombia. Public transportation as an attractive benefits for citizens and the city economy. And I urge again the speakers to stick to the agenda. Thank you.
The Secretary of Transit in Bogota was colonized by crime, so my first secretary did not know nothing about transport, but know a lot again about fighting corruption. Now, transporters and public officials believe more in engineering and accept engineers' knowledge. Okay. We used mimes, and we asked citizens to help government to control behavior. So 350,000 cards, citizens' cards, were delivered to drivers, and if some driver was seeing another driver making a traffic fault, he was using the red card as in soccer. We, in a small part of Bogota, we replaced the police, the corrupted traffic police, by mimes. The journalist's first question was, could the mimes put fines? And I said, of course not. It's legally very difficult to allow mimes to put fines. So the journalist said, it will not work. And it worked. It worked in part by the miracle of television. Television showing close-ups of this small group of mimes. At the beginning, they were only 20. At the end, they were 400. And 9 months after the beginning of the mime operation, we destroyed it. We finished the traffic police of Bogota. And we made an agreement with National Police that has a lot more serious disciplinary ways of combating corruption. This. These are the cards. Bogota was declared flirtatious because I thought it was ugly. But we all know ugly people that are attractive. They are attractive because of their behavior. So let's become a flirtatious city. Now it's rather beautiful. This is the theory, very simple. 3 regulatory systems. Russia and Colombia are very different. In Colombia, being shamed is a lot more frequent feeling, and Russia is perhaps, if I'm not inventing, but using knowledge about Russia and the Russian literature, Russians are more susceptible to guilt. So we have to, perhaps the cards would not work as much as in Colombia. Moral norms make people fear guilt, and social norms make people fear being shamed, fear of social rejection. But you have also positive emotions linked to the obedience of rules. Half of the program of Cultura Ciudadana was linked to transport. And that, in Bogota, we made interesting the public transport, basically by fighting corruption and betting on the use of art to correct people's behavior. Mimes, the citizen's card, and stars. In every place where a pedestrian has been killed, you have a star about 1 meter, 20 centimeters long, that remembers that there was a person that was killed in that place. That's the life protection, dropping figures in people dead in traffic accidents. We had also prohibition of drinking after 1 o'clock in the morning in public spaces. It was called the carrot law. To be carrot in Colombia is to be self-controlled, not drinking too much. That helped. And the change of the police and the seat belts. After 1 year of government, 70% of people use seat belts. At the end of that first term, it was more than 90%. We had also other technical things like medicated cars for getting quickly to the accident place. Well, there is a metro discussion, old at least 40 years, and we have defended with Mayor Peñalosa the option of BMT, bus mass transport system. It's a lot of ideas come from the metro, but it's a lot less expensive. For Colombian economy, we could have one line of metro instead of having 6 or 7 lines of Transmilenio. There is a dedicated way for the bus. There are stations. You pay and you register in the station, not in the bus, and people get out and get in very quickly in the bus. The bus is very reliable in terms of time. It gets precision. It's not very comfortable. You have people stuck, especially in the rush hours. Well, this is an illustration of the change. We have paths for bikes. We had a $1 million worth mission by Japanese engineers. And each meeting with us, they were saying, "Your bikes are there, Mr. Mayor." These guys didn't expect much things from the bike. Bogota has an ideal topography for biking, but has perhaps a little too much rain. But the Holland ambassador was going with umbrella and inviting me to learn to use umbrella on bikes. We have a lot of use on Sundays and on days without work. People go, more than 1 million people go in bikes in the streets, but it's sport. We need to change people's behavior to use bikes during the work week. These are some illustrations. There are cultural problems with using bike in work days. Swearing is one of them. People should want to take a new dress after biking to the work. Universities are strongly committed with the use of bikes. Well, in this moment, we have a car restriction of 50%, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. 50% cars have to stop. So we have a lot more cars than we have roads. And in development plan, we have just 5% more roads in 4 years. And in one good economy year, you can have easily 3 or 4% more cars. So we are not even leveling. We are allowing, in some sense, to the crash. Well, the thing is not make so attractive public transport, but make non-attractive the car transport. Explaining people that carrying 1 ton of metal and plastics for carrying 60 kilograms of humanity is a sort of absurd. People fear the contact with other people. In Soviet Union, as I knew it in the 70s in Lithuania, people were very friendly, helping people to get out of the bus. People do not think badly about another people touching you. That's a great virtue, and that's perhaps the secret for more acceptance of bus transport. I will not repeat what is there written. Okay, so change, institutional change in the transport, the fighting for passengers, la guerra del centavo, looking for 1 centime, all the drivers competing in disorder. This is the past. The new model is a lot more modern, but we need still a lot of work for having better behavior. It's ideal to use art as we used mimes, and we have to counterbalance a machistic way of understanding government. A machistic macho is very afraid to help to grow up as his family a child that is from another father. So in the case of transport system, you have to inherit and carry to be complete a system like if you created it. So Peñalosa was a very good father for implementation of the BMT. I was perhaps the best defensor of the bus system in face of metro. But now we are again in a discussion, and perhaps we will have 1 line of metro and 8 lines of
Антонас, я приношу глубокие извинения.
Antonis, I'm really sorry, but we are running out of time. We're being pressed for time.
Вот абсолютно принципиально важный.
So Antonis has touched upon a really important issues like behavior and machistic behavior, and this is what we tend to adhere to here in Moscow. There is a lot of machismo. The mention of the fact that in Lithuania there were very, very polite drivers, I do remember that. And we have our next presentation.
And it will be Frederica Paralotto, and he'll speak about city flows. Frederica, you're welcome.
Да, пожалуйста.
Yeah.
Not more than 6 minutes.
6 minutes. Okay, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. Basically, I want to just take you quickly through what we think is changing transport now, in my opinion, and in general, in the way we observe cities as transport consultants. First of all, I would like to say that in the old time, going from A to B was basically an issue of 2 only functions. This is great PowerPoint effect that I just created. And basically, the issue was about going from A to B, and the 2 variables were time and money. Basically, the only 2 elements of concern were how do I move around? How do I plan transport? I just do it through understanding how much money it will cost and how much time it will take. It was a very functional approach to transport, but now things have profoundly changed, and we kind of start understanding the very strong implication that decisions that revolves around transport have on our cities. And therefore, transport in a way is becoming more complex, is becoming much more of an issue about planning and how city operates. So, very quickly, I don't want to talk about the externalities of the car. This is about the space requirements for different modes of transport, coming from the John Whitelock book. It basically shows that if you're moving by car, on a solo driving at around 40 kilometers per hour, you occupy about 60 meters of public space. Clearly, cars are kind of intense space eaters systems compared to public transport. And this is one of the reasons why they actually create troubles in city. But this has been said a lot of times. It's all kind of nearly boring because you always see it. I also would like to say that very often, though, when you want to go from A to B fast, even in public transport, you might generate some problem with the city. This is a project in Guadalajara where we are working at the moment. And when I went to see this BRT system, I was surprised to see how it was actually designed to provide very fast connectivity through the city, but as a result, it created a massive cut. So if you're going from A to B fast, regardless what mean of transport you're looking at, you are kind of compromised the quality of a city. And in that sense, you can see the impact on the city fabric. So this is Moscow, and what we see here is the isochron axis, is how far you go in the unit of time. This is about 55 minutes from the Red Square by car in a kind of free flow condition, basically without congestion on the streets. And what you see here is starting from exactly the same distance. It's how far you go if you walk. It kind of gives you the sense of the difference in between the two modes of transport, but also you kind of understand that cars are such a fundamental issue in contemporary cities that it's very difficult to think they will kind of go away as a mean of transport. They will stay, definitely, as Mr. Lizzotto was suggesting, with revised densities. Now, this kind of approach to cities has generated some issue. This is a quick video, but I don't know if we still have time to show it. But basically, this is a video that we've done when you're coming from the airport into town. And it's actually interesting because you see the way the roads were planned up to, say, 10 years ago, and the impact on the city functioning. And I think this is a kind of interesting analysis because it kind of shows that as you are outside the city and you have a kind of strong express system that bisects into the suburban areas. But what is also interesting about Moscow is that this kind of approach has been then taken into the city itself. And when you are outside of the city, you tend to go on split levels or underpass. As you step into the city itself, you start going into one-way system, low left turn maneuvers. What is interesting about this path that is basically a radial system that takes you down into the heart of the city is that you have only 6 points of crossing at grade, which is clearly an issue when you start thinking, which is the topic I'm going to go very soon into, of sustainable mobility, of non-motorized transport, on bicycle, on pedestrians. When you see, this kind of approach, then kind of penetrates throughout the city into the very heart of it, and it becomes a system that basically bisects the city in two. Here, for instance, are the distance in between the different stops. And then as we move into the city, we reach the Kremlin, and I think it's actually also very interesting because in the 80s, this system was revised. It used to be a two-way system, and again, I think with the idea of creating express movement in town, a single one-way loop has been generated. So you now have 6, 7, 8 lanes in front of the Bolshoi, 9, of one-way loop, and that was planned only with the idea of creating express movement from A to B into the city of Moscow. And I do believe that we have to start thinking or rethinking about these sort of solutions that have been deployed with this framework of going from A to B without really thinking on the impact on the surrounding roads. So. And yes, cities are about cities. Cities are about having the possibility of creating a permeable environment. And so what we're showing here super fast is actually this new approach. Basically, in the old time, as I was saying earlier on, there was the issue of cars, public transport, pedestrian. That was the sort of line of thinking of priorities. And now what we see here is the inversion of this line of thinking. This is the new approach for the 21st century. And then if you look at, this is a great slide by Luca Guala, a friend of mine. And basically what you see in the three topics on the top right, you see that it's about non-transport use, so modal shares, modal mix. It's about pedestrian, public transport. It's kind of inverted. The priority have been inverted. And if you look at the three, four topics of the new priority, you see that all of those are revolving around the sustainable mobility, about pedestrians, about bicycles. We have to think that transport, pedestrians in cities and bicycles in cities are mode of transport which have to be nourished, which are as important as the car. And so we have to start thinking the infrastructure on, we have to start thinking the infrastructure addressing these new priorities. And we have to think about the street as an holistic system in which there is no the sort of typical sort of split of elements with architects, landscape, transport engineering. We have to start thinking again holistically as a street, as a public space, which takes space for movement, but is also a public space in itself. This is a project that we've done recently in the heart of Moscow. How long do I have?
Yes.
In the heart of Moscow, this is in front of Christ the Savior. It was also very interesting because the idea here was to say, let's look at this road, let's look at this part of town, but okay, how do I do if I am a pedestrian? If I'm a pedestrian, I actually have to circumnavigate with excruciatingly long waiting times at the junction. It makes it so inconvenient. And then if you look at the street itself actually can be revised, can be readjusted, and the space can be redistributed in order to create a permeability which is not there at the moment. And I show you here the other video. This is a picture taken from Christ the Savior. And basically here we are showing how we can actually, by taking what is there, change into something that can be dramatically different. Permeability, the ability to go through space with all different modes of transport is super important. The space as it is done now is profoundly against permeability at grade, and we think that this can actually be revised. We can redistribute the space, we can change it without actually compromising the traffic. We've done a vast amount of surveys and simulation, and the idea was, okay, we can take exactly what it is there in terms of traffic flows, which has on the simulation model of an average traveling speed of 30 kilometers, and you can actually change it, redistributing the space, giving permeability on pedestrian on the junction without compromising the traveling speed. So what we are saying is that if you start looking with a new mindset, which is about rebalancing these different components in which pedestrian and bicycle become a fundamental element of the story, you can actually take those spaces and transform it, generate public space, and make it very attractive without compromising the traffic flows. There is the possibility of kind of changing the existing patterns without having an impact on the existing traffic volumes. Often streets are longer and bigger than the required. 1 minute and I'm done. And I just wanted to say a very quick word on the last project that we're working on, which is the pedestrian and the bicycle master plan. We are in the process of working on this. I would like to, it's a great team. We are working with the Institute, Moscow Transmit Project. So we are working with Rosina, a partner, from Austria. And we're working with a great team from the DOT, young, enthusiastic group of people that every city would envy. And this is the map of the car crashes involving pedestrians in Moscow, as provided by the police. And I think this would be one of the main topics of the plan. It's not just about creating an environment for pedestrian and bicycle, but we want also to enhance drastically the safety of streets. Thank you.
Спасибо, Федерико. Я обращаюсь в зал.
Thank you, Federica. And Mr. Perlotto has pointed out a very important thing. The 20th century was the century of cars. It started in 1908 when mass production of cars at Ford's factory has started, and now it is coming to an end. It is really important to hear this statement from somebody from Milano, which is the most motorized city in Western Europe. Please take notice of it. And our next speaker is Michael Rawlings, the design director of City ID. Mike, you're welcome.
Got 10 minutes? Just about. I'm going to go quickly, going to show you a lot of images. I'm delighted to be here, and this is a fantastic project. I think it's a transformational project for the city, in fact. So without further ado, I'm going to talk about how we improve people's perception and image of Moscow by designing information services that make sense to them. How can we make the network, the spaghetti of transport, easy to read and easy to understand? And that's a challenge. It's a very important challenge, because we won't get patronage into public transport, we won't change modal shift, unless we introduce the idea of quality and the idea of the user into the experience of using transport systems. How does this work? Okay. We've got a great team. Again, we're working with DOT and others. We're also working with Billings-Jackson Design on this project, and we've been working on it now for approximately 18 months. A couple of images of best practice. What we're doing in Moscow isn't necessarily unique, though the scale of what we're doing here is probably outstrips any other project in the world at this current time. London, Legible London, started back in 2004 and started to integrate for the public various modes of transport by designing an identity that pulls together the different parts of the experience. And it's been very successful. It has 1 billion users a year. It's changing patronage in the way transport is being used in that city. It spans bike share to walking systems in particular. New York is going even further. We're lead designers on a project called Walk New York. We've been working there for 3 years now. And we've seen the rollout of a new information identity across a whole host of projects, from subway to bus rapid transit to walking to bike share. And now we're seeing it roll out to ferry systems as well. Now, the thing here, and the important thing, behind all of this sits an impressive database and cartographic engine that drives hundreds of different and thousands of different outputs every year. And it's really important. Moscow kind of needs to do the same, needs to learn from that. Working too well? Okay, on to Moscow again. Okay, the problem with Moscow is that Moscow has sort of grown over time, and all the various elements that make up your journey experience have never been co-planned or co-designed in the right way. It needs hoovering up, it needs cleaning up, and needs to be expressed in a way that speaks of this city, not somewhere else. So these things have not been provided with a duty of care. They're not necessarily well maintained. There's a real opportunity to start to link together visually the way information is provided to people. So what we're trying to do in introducing this navigation system is actually introduce something that's better than best practice, that focuses on people, that relates to the whole journey from pre-arrival, what you do online or on the mobile site, right the way through to looking at every mode and stitching those together using various different media. And lastly, doing it in a way, it's like designing with a recipe, linking it together through a visual language. Putting people at the heart to tie together all those various modes. We're all pedestrians. We don't just use the bus. We are a pedestrian when we board and when we exit the bus. We need information at both ends of that journey experience to make it connected. Similarly with the metro systems, similarly with the bus systems and trolleybus. So what we need to do is design a range of elements that work across those journey stages, from planning your journey at home right the way through to your destination and back again. It's really crucial. So we see this as a kind of a curatorial role, linking together the journey experience for people. Okay. There are thousands and thousands of points of touch in a journey. They're like photographs that go off in your head, from looking at points of arrival to what's on a platform, to where I get off, to actually on the buses or trams or metro cars themselves. And we need to design each of these particular points in a certain way to bring them together. And we've done some early concept work that starts to think about the function and utility of information, how it's designed for people, linking it together. And we've moved on from that now to start to think about a visual identity for the city. For the first time, Moscow has its own typeface designed by A2 with Ilya Rudiman. And it will be part and parcel of the future city's DNA. We've also worked on pictogram design. Again, they're all bespoke and unique to Moscow for all sorts of different services. Not just for transport, but potentially for tourism, for culture, and other areas as well. Moving on further, we've designed a mapping system, and this is in its infancy. It's an early system at the moment, but it's a beautiful system. It relates to the pedestrian. It includes features and facilities that people, when they're in environments, can actually use. They're all designed in a way as well that's heads up. As you look at them, it presents the view that you see in front of you. It's obvious. Moving on, they contain illustrations to help you reference yourself in public space. We've looked at them from an ergonomic, a legibility point of view to ensure that the products are very readable and very easy to use. And we've also related it to the Moscow itself and the beauty and expression of its circular forms and detail. And this has become a key part of the visual language as we've moved forward. And these are some of the early prototypes that are being developed, and one or two of these have now gone into the city. And I'll show you a few others. They're designed in a way that ensures ease of read for different users, whether they're in wheelchairs or standing, and at certain distances. And they've been prototyped. We're planning each and every station environment and looking where the products will be located. It moves on. And these are a few examples. I'm going to go through these quite quickly. So direction information. It goes through. Colour coding, ease of reference, a clear hierarchy of information. As you move into the platforms, given direction information through route maps and diagrams, in each case always forward-facing or heads-up to give you the direction you need to move in, around metro lines, and as you exit, giving you information as pedestrians to use as well. So move along. And also the network itself, the actual metro network. Beautiful refined products, very high quality materials. Something that people will actually go and use and engage in is really important here. Beautiful forms, very sculptural, relating to the Moscow N in its design, but also including very functional information such as exit information. You can see here, into subways and underpasses. So stitching together all your journey stages through information. In a way, the system is your friend. That's the way we want to design it, that it's there when you need it. This isn't moving for some reason. It doesn't want to wayfind, it doesn't want to navigate. There you go. And then outside. So we're also designing the system to work outside in the streets and spaces as well. And not just that, building on Federico's point about rebalancing streets and spaces, there's a huge opportunity to bring some of the quality of the metro system outdoors and into the streets and spaces itself, and to design beautiful products and services for bus, trolleybus and tram users, for bike share, all part of a consistent system for the city. But it needs careful network planning. Spaces do need to be rebalanced, and we need to simplify people's mental map and image of how to use transport. 7 key points: put people first, plan in the round, co-plan, co-design and deliver. Stick to your vision and values, Design in a way that speaks of this city rather than somewhere else, and make it seamless. Connect every point of your journey. Build the resources behind it so it can populate and grow as your transport system changes. And invest once and wisely. This type of product brings a return on investment, probably higher than any road scheme or any other major infrastructure project. It's good value for money. Moscow should carry on doing it. Thank you very much.
Уважаемые
Dear participants of the session, I think that you now have understanding that Moscow is a very vibrant city and it is energetically trying to adopt best world practices. And two of our speakers were giving examples from the Moscow practice and the worldwide practices which are adopted in Moscow. So my question is to the Vice Mayor, and so your focus on adopting these best practices, how are you going to continue your work? We have a number of proverbs in Russian which are about the fact that only very, very stupid people are learning from their own mistakes. Smart people try to learn from somebody else's mistakes and use somebody else's experience. As far as transportation is concerned, there is a number of things which should have been done 25 or 30 years ago, and now we're trying to speed up this implementation. We are adopting the best practices, but we have certain nuances related to tender procedures, for example. And in this particular case, we focus more on the capabilities of our partners and on the prices. We were fortunate to have the best possible teams in the world to work on a number of our projects. So we are trying to get what is the best out there in the market, and we're trying to implement it in Moscow. I wouldn't call it a strategy, but we are working in this way. And also the majority of decisions and solutions that we find, they are non-trivial solutions. So we are looking at the best available practices in the world, and those practices which can be rolled out as quickly as possible in Moscow. Maxim, thank you very much. And my next question will be to two participants. One is my colleague, Mr. Belyanin, who is a very big expert in transport modeling, and another person is the person who is responsible for implementation of all these practices, Mr. Mikhailov, the director of one of the biggest transportation companies. So a question to both of you. Interaction of citizens with public transport. In the light of what you have just found out, what are you planning to take in the near perspective, in the close perspective? What are you planning to do in order to enhance attractiveness of public transport?
Да.
Alexei, you'll start, right? Well, whatever you say. So please start, and then the microphone will be given to our next speaker. So, first of all, it's understandable that the issue of how to make Moscovites use public transportation instead of their cars, it's the issue of the city policy, it's the issue of communications. And this is a radical change in the style of behavior, to give up the pleasure of driving your own car and to use the public transportation. This is the issue of influencing minds of people, to explain the benefits to them, and the issue of their preference, how should it be explained to them. And this is again the issue of communications and the feedback. So the people need to feel that the authorities respond to their needs. And the second point here is that in order to wage this successful dialogue, it's not what the authorities do. It's important it matters what people think about the authorities and think what is the attitude to what the authorities do. In London, for instance, there is a fee for coming downtown, £11 per day, and this idea was actually voiced in 2005. The law was introduced in 2009, and 4 years they talked to Londoners, and there were public discussions going in the internet and in different conferences, and there were 6 times less those who were against this measure of the city authorities. And this is a crucial point. The majority should support your decisions. And we also have this debate ongoing about a fee to be paid for entering the center of the city. But shall we just use the stick to introduce it, or a carrot? The carrot should be preferred. Say, if you you need to come to the center of the city and feel that you actually benefit for paying, because we pay for, but we have several rights in the city. If you have 5 days a week, and then you have a linear tariff, which provides that you pay 200 rubles for 1 day, 400 rubles for 2 days, but it shouldn't be a linear tariff. There should be a cheap price for first and second day, and expensive for third day, and then fourth and fifth days will come at discounts. So it means that people will have to choose whether they use their private car 1 or 2 days a week, or think about other options. I understand your idea, but it is some superhumanism, because in parking fee in other cities is quite the opposite, and authorities don't want motorists to come daily there. But you see, by doing this kind of measures, we will have the picture which we have on the left-hand side, and this is the number of rides you do. If you have this linear dependency, then you don't have this self-regulation. But if you have this kind of options, then we have a reduced number of traffic jams. And we did the tests for it. We understand that the time is short, but it works. And we did the testing of this idea, and there was an experience with certain people, and the respondents were quite happy about it, and they understood the message of the authorities. So, Evgeny, whatever we do from viewpoint of carrot and stick, whatever we do, but you will be distributing carrots, and all these solutions like paid parking and fees to enter the city, it will be all your burden, right? Can you carry it? Yeah, that's a very good question, because 80% of the rides is what we lost passengers for the public transportation, and it is also related to the load on roads. And if we don't have this free lanes for buses, we cannot resolve the major challenge. And this challenge is dominant. It's a time to wait for a next bus to come, and a guaranteed time for the ride. And we're not talking about the speed, but predictability. Even if it is slow, but if you know it's 5 or 7 minutes, it's better than if it may be 2 minutes or 20. And therefore, these displays at the bus stops and Wi-Fi inside, some additional services, they actually alleviate this kind of waiting time and anxiety of people, and this And by 80%, we resolve these people from just wasting the time. And at the same time, we get rid of this excessive number of cars in the streets. Well, we need to use numbers here. Currently, we have 30% more buses than we would have if we had dedicated lanes. We have some surplus number of buses, compared to other capitals of the world. It means that we can increase speed, reduce the interval. Well, carrot and stick are very much interconnected, and the stick will free the road, and carrot makes the payment sweeter. So, Mr. Mokos, the question is for you. So you see Bogota, where the transportation behavior, it looks like Russia, and maybe even worse. But you said that the private parking issue was related to corruption. But what was the sentiment of the public? How they responded to this wrongly parked cars, and how to avoid this?
Every Bogotano was feeling like a traffic engineer. So when I was elected, the first 3 months, I received a lot of letters explaining what to do with the traffic in Bogota. There were some locally justified, beautiful projects. People with physical limitations were allowed to use streets, part of the streets, as parking. It was canceling one of the tracks for use, sort of myopia. People did not look to the consequences, and there was not a global understanding. The Japanese people made a transport plan for 25 years and showed that some ways for cars, and mainly the bus mass transport system, they were a lot higher return for investment. So economically, it was better to do the things in the order that technicians recommended. The Japanese people said, without investing 1 cent in infrastructure, just by educating people, you can get 20% quicker traveling in the city. But it will take 20 years to educate people. We think that we can do it quicker.
Большое спасибо, Ананас. Правда, японцы, судя по моим разговорам,
Well, from what I know from talking to my Tokyo colleagues, they are not only educating people, they have also some strict measures. You can get a registration plate only if you are registered and you have a registered parking place for your car. And this is a draconian measure, but it is still there. And for Yandex, now the question, Ludmila, to what extent your services have changed the attitude of the city and just a regular passenger? What have they changed, your internet services? Svetlana, please go. Well, I will ask the audience who don't use Yandex applications for your current transportation needs. Are there any people who don't? So, yes, a small fracture of those present, and virtually it is very topical for the city to provide convenient and easy services for its citizens and to use the existing infrastructure to its maximum. And we have several applications which we are proud of, and we call them city applications for smartphones, which are focused on the needs of the users, which help them to build the best route and to come on time from point A to point B. And these applications like Yandex Metro, Yandex Transport, Yandex Commuter Trains help you to build a route not only in Metro and with the use of commuter trains and Yandex Taxi. From what we heard, it is actually created for a case when there is no standard route of public transportation, or there is an inconvenient schedule for buses, or so then we offer this Yandex Taxi, and with Yandex Navigation you see the current traffic jams, and then you can even decide to walk at some distances, and therefore our Yandex Navigator is very popular. It is not only for motorists, it helps to alleviate certain traffic jams in Moscow and provide alternatives to the drivers, and we know that in some places where there are no dedicated lanes for buses, Yandex Navigation is very helpful. And I would like to emphasize, we started from several cities, and we used available raw data, and we checked several solutions. We saw actual movement of buses, and now we are represented in 10 large cities, and we would like to extend our thanks to governors and the city mayors, which provide us with the information relevant to navigation. And after we roll out these systems, we receive a lot of feedback, and you see all of them comments virtually are commendable. And we hope that all our efforts in Moscow and our close interaction with Moscow authorities will launch another application which will be very helpful for our Moscow citizens. And now, Mr. Rees, you are an international expert, and you live in Moscow, so you are an insider, actually. What's your take? What's your opinion, your expectations? How Moscow can get adapted to a new transportation realities by implementing these international practices? What are our chances as an expert and a Moscow insider?
Merci beaucoup de me donner la parole. Je vais parler français, mais quelqu'un va traduire.
Спасибо, что дали мне слово. Я буду говорить на французском, будет перевод.
Je vais essayer de résumer en
In these 5 minutes, I would like to express all the experience we gained in Strasbourg for 25 years. And the first aspect I would like to pay attention to is that any city, either Moscow, Paris, or Strasbourg, cannot become a big garage with 2 lanes. Therefore, in 1960s, we came to understanding that the city shall become a place where people not only use their transport, their cars, but it is a place where it is comfortable to live, where you can go shopping and educate your children and enjoy life. And the second point, which I would like to point out, there is no miracle solution to these issues. You need to plan these efforts by implementing a midterm strategy, which I will stipulate further. And the situation is as follows. In Strasbourg, in 1989, when I came to the city administration, 76 of citizens actually used their private cars. And in 25 years, we managed to attract the local residents, and their share is 46%. It is, and we actually spent or we attracted $1 billion, $1.6 billion euros, correction, to implement these policies. This outcome, by some parameters, is quite modest, but still, we would never achieve this if we haven't planned these actions and if we were not that consistent. Another example is that we need to be consistent in the policy, and some other cities can be taken as an example for it. If you want the motorists to leave their cars beyond the boundaries of the city, probably you don't need to create parking spaces downtown, because they act as a magnet for such drivers. To some extent, this is kind of a populist decision, because you actually respond to the needs of motorists by creating these parking places in the center. But not always. You need to follow this populism. You need to combine healthy rationale and the aspects of efficiency. I know that my time is quite limited, but But the role of authorities is to introduce some restrictions or to introduce some measures to alleviate, regulate the existing traffic. If you create pedestrian areas, then you forbid the cars into these particular areas, and however, you still have a chance to involve, to attract the motorists in the campaign to use the public transportation, and then you may not increase the capacity of the roads. And in my opinion, the city management should not only use the restrictions, but engage citizens and car owners to the discussions and of the use of public transportation and their own use of it. And this is the message I wanted to convey to the forum participants, because following this policy allowed me to be re-elected in March for my second term of duty, and this policy includes some populism, but at the same time rationale. And I believe our policy, combined policy, was quite successful. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Roland was actually made a very good conclusion. All the correct words were said. The consistent policy, the impossibility of creating the city as a huge parking lots, and you should not, you see, attract people to park in the center. You see, this is a synthetic European experience. It was now announced to all of us. He is not a consultant. He's an actual politician, and the one we can trust.